Today's topic is Crown Rule. The Crown Rule was started in 1858 until the independence of India. So, this Crown Rule was established after the 1857 revolt. So, the Crown Rule also established so many acts for the governance in India. First one is Government of India Act 1858. And this act is also known as Act for the Good Government of India. And this Government of India Act 1858 abolished East India Company from all powers like territories, revenues, their government in India. They were all abolished by the Government of India Act 1858, and these all powers were given to the British Crown. So, features of the Government of India Act 1858 are: it changed the designation of the Governor General of India to Viceroy. So, our first Viceroy of India was Lord Canning, and he is the direct representative of British Crown in India. So, Lord Canning was the first Viceroy of India under the British Crown. So, the Government of India Act 1858 abolished double government. Double government means Board of Control and a Court of Directors. So, Court of Directors are for the commercial purpose and the Board of Control are for the political affairs. So, this double government was abolished by the Government of India Act 1858. And another feature of this act was it created new office called Secretary of State for India. So, the Secretary of State, he is a member of the British Cabinet. So, to assist him, this act established a 15-member council. This is a advisory body to assist and to give advices to the Secretary of State. And one thing is, he is responsible to the British Parliament, and he always gives reports about the Indian affairs to the British Parliament. So, the Secretary of State is a political head, and he is always responsible for the governance of British Indian Empire. And the chairman of this 15-member council was appointed by the Secretary of State. Just you have to learn the three topics under the Government of India Act 1858. Those are Governor General of India to Viceroy. Our first Viceroy was Lord Canning, and he is the direct representative of the British Crown, and it abolished double government. Those are Board of Control and Court of Directors, and it created new office, Secretary of State for India. First Secretary of State was Lord Stanley, and a 15-member council was appointed to assist the Secretary of State. And Secretary of State who appointed by the British Kingdom, and he is the member of the British Cabinet. So he is always responsible to his government. Okay. So after the 1858 Act, we have Indian Councils Act. Three Councils Acts were there: 1861, 1892, and 1909. Three Councils Acts. So these Councils Acts were enacted by the British Parliament. Main motto was just Indians cooperation. They want and they needed the Indians cooperation and support to the British Indian government. After 1857 revolt, they needed Indians cooperation. So first one is Indian Councils Act of 1861. So the first feature of this act was Viceroy should nominate some Indians as non-official members in his council. So, legislative council needed some Indians because they needed Indians cooperation. That's why they want to Indians get in their legislative council. So, in this point, Lord Canning, 1862, he nominated three members from India: Raja of Benares, Maharaja of Patiala, Sir Dinakar Rao. These three members were nominated by the Lord Canning in Legislative Council. And it restored the legislative powers of Bombay and Madras. In Regulating Act 1773, we have learned about the Bengal was a higher position, and Madras and Bombay were subordinate to the Bengal Governor General. So, according to the Indian Councils Act of 1861, it restored all legislative powers to the Bombay and Madras, and the new legislative councils were established in Bengal, northwestern frontier provinces, Punjab. So, another important feature was the portfolio system was introduced by the Lord Canning. Actually, he introduced it in 1858, but this was came into force in 1861 according to the Indian Councils Act of 1861. So, in this part, the members of the Viceroy's Council were in charge of one department or more than one department. So, the members of the Viceroy's Council have the responsibility to in charge of departments. Just to review those features of the Indian Councils Act 1861, just Viceroy should nominate non-official members from India, and Lord Canning, in that time Lord Canning was the Viceroy and he nominated three members from India. And another important feature was during emergency the Viceroy can issue any ordinance. According to the Legislative Council authority, he can issue any ordinance, and that ordinance time period was lifetime was 6 months only during the emergency. And it restored legislative powers of Bombay and Madras, and new legislative councils were established, and it empowered the Viceroy to make rules in the business transaction purpose, and the portfolio system was introduced by the Lord Canning. Okay, now we are going to learn about Indian Councils Act of 1892. So, according to the Indian Councils Act of 1892, it increased non-official members in central and provincial legislative councils. For the first time, it announced the budget in Legislative Council, and the debated in Legislative Council. So, they increased non-official members in central and provincial legislative councils. So, these members, Central Legislative Council members were nominated by the Viceroy on the recommendations of the provincial legislative councils. So, whenever coming to the provincial legislative council, the members were appointed and nominated by the governor of the province, and these members were nominated by the governor on the recommendations of the district boards, municipalities, and trade associations, and chambers and jamindars. So, Central Legislative Council members were nominated by the Viceroy on the recommendations of the provincial legislative councils and Bengal Chamber of Commerce. So, what is Bengal Chamber of Commerce? This Bengal Chamber of Commerce was established in 1853 for the maintenance of the uniformity in rules and regulations and usages of the trade. So not only in our India, but it is for the world. And this is for the protection of trade and traders. uh, Headquarters was in Kolkata. So to decrease the nationalism of India, Lord Curzon and Viceroy of India announced a partition of Bengal. So in that time, Indian National Congress against this partition of Bengal, and we want self-governance of India. And Indian National Congress said we need of reforms from the acts. So in that time, Gopal Krishna Gokhale met Morley to reforms for the convenience of the government of in India. In Indian Councils Act of 1909, the size of legislative councils were increased. So Central Legislative Council 16 members to the 60, and it was a official majority. And Provincial Legislative Council was not uniform. And so this Indian Council Act 1909, also known as Minto Morley reforms. And the Bengal Legislative Council, Bombay, Madras, UP have the 50 members each. So Minto was the Viceroy, and Morley was the Secretary of State. For the first time, Indian member Satyendra P. Sinha was the first Indian member who went to the Viceroy's Executive Council, and he was appointed by the Minto Viceroy. And it introduced a communal representation. It means separate electorates. And they announced this is as legalized communalism. And one member to the Viceroy's Executive Council, and two Indians to the Council of Secretary of State appointed by the Morley. And we call Lord Minto was the father of communal electorate. So in this point, the Muslim members were elected by the Muslim voters, the Hindu members elected by the Hindu voters. This known as communal representation. Next act, Government of India Act 1919. This is also known as Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, because Montagu was the Secretary of State and Chelmsford was the Viceroy of India. So the main motto of this act was expand participation of Indians in government. So it separated the central and provincial subjects, but structure was centralized or unitary, but subjects were divided into central and provincial subjects. Again, provincial subjects were divided into two types: transferred and reserved. Transferred subjects administered by the governor on the aid and advice of the ministers to the Legislative Council, and reserved subjects are administered by the governor to his Executive Council. So provincial subjects were divided into two types: transferred and reserved. Transferred by governor on the aid and advice of the ministers in Legislative Council, and reserved subjects administered by the governor to aid and advise in Executive Council. So the system was called diarchy system. It means dual scheme of governance. According to Government of India Act 1919, bicameralism was started. So Indian Legislative Council to bicameral Legislative Council established, and there were two houses, upper house and lower house. Upper house is also known as the Council of States. Lower house also known as the Legislative Assembly. In upper house there were 60 members and their term was 5 years. Lower house 145 members and 3 years is the term. In Viceroy's Executive Council, out of 6 members, 3 were Indians. And it separated the provincial and central budget. First time they introduced central and provincial budget as the one budget, but according to this 1919 Government of India Act, they separated provincial and central budget. And first this object was responsible government in India. So this Government of India Act 1919 Montagu Chelmsford reforms appointed statutory commission for the inquiry and report on its working after 10 years of this 1919 Government of India Act. So the Simon Commission was appointed in 1927. It means 2 years before scheduled time. So total members were 7 members and the chairman was Sir John Simon. In this commission, all members are the British officials. So there was no Indian to review the Government of India 1919 in Simon Commission. So our Indians were boycotted this Simon Commission, and this Simon Commission submitted its report in 1930, and under the leadership of Lala Lajpat Roy, we given a slogan called Simon Go Back. So Simon Commission reported in 1930 some recommendations were given by the Simon. First one is abolition of diarchy. So we learned about the diarchy. Diarchy means provincial subjects were divided into 2 types, reserved and transferred. So this was and the next one is responsible government would be extended in provinces, and a continuation of communal electorate. It means one community would be appointed by this or elected by those members only, and establishment of a British India and princely states into federation. So federation means united all the states within the single umbrella called British India. So to consider those proposals by the commission, they established 3 roundtable conferences by the British Parliament. In this conferences, the representatives from British government means England Parliament, and British India means those states which are directly ruled by the British government, and princely states means independent states in India. So these 3 round table conferences were inaugurated by the George V. He was the king of United Kingdom in that time, and the first round table conference was established in 1930-31. Second conference was in 1931, and the third was in 1932. In that time, Viceroy was Lord Irwin, and PM of United Kingdom was Ramsay MacDonald. On the basis of this discussion, White Paper on Constitutional Reforms was submitted to the Joint Select Committee of the British Parliament. This committee was established by the British Parliament. On the recommendations of this Joint Select Committee, those changes were incorporated in Government of India Act 1935. According to this Joint Select Committee and recommendations of this committee, and the British government said those recommendations were incorporated in Government of India Act 1935. Next class we will see about the Government of India Act 1935 and Indian Independence Act 1947.